Interview with amazing authors. And today we get to interview Celosia Crane. I am waiting for her to come up. And there she is. Okay. We're waiting just for... There she is. Hello, lovely lady.
Hello, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, and no feedback.
Yay! And you look amazing.
Thank you. I wanted to, I got off work early today, ironically.
Oh,
So,
wow. That rocks. And we've been kind of productive here. Got things went through and stuff. So, yay! And I'm so
there
happy to
you
be here
go.
with you. Okay. I suppose let's start with your bio and introduce you. Hello, everybody. This is Celosia Crane. She's an amazing author. I love her stories and books. She's a speculative. I cannot speak today. Please forgive me.
Oh, that's been me all week. Don't feel bad.
Okay, good. She is a speculative fiction writing, whiskey loving lady with a passion for classic American muscle cars and a penchant for hair flowers, leather jackets, and lipsticks. Her outfits are always amazing. Check out her Instagram, guys. You'll love it. Her works include The Ranger and the Green Witch in The Rogues and Wildfire, the drawing of poisons that's also in the Rogues and Before and Beyond, book 2 of that set. Elysium in the Snow, that is in Winter Whimsy. Oh, I love that story. I can't wait till she continues in that universe. You'll love it. She has since gone to self-publish several contemporary romance novels that, for some odd reason, Hallmark has not figured out that they really need to jump on. Christmas in Crockett Cove Inn and Whiskey Punch, a twin flame fantasy, and Cardinals in the Snow that she has taken down to do something with. I'll ask about
Yeah.
that later because I'm really curious because that was like the first one I read after Rogues and Wildfire, and I loved it. But Christmas in Crockett Cove Inn and Whiskey Punch, a Twin Flames fantasy, can be gotten in ebook form. They're on my Kindle. On Instagram, she's the Exotic Ant. She has Twitter. I will put the links in the chat. And, of course, Lantern Audio Works. There's a bunch of stuff there. And,
Yes.
her podcast of the children's stories. She is my hero. I'm just going to say that right now. There have been many days and nights where I'm just like, oh, thank God she's doing this podcast. So, yes. I'm just going to tell the world now that I have you up here that you are amazing and you have helped this tired mom out so much just for reading to us. So thank you.
You're very welcome.
Okay. Hello, lovely lady. What inspired you to start writing your stories?
Oh, goodness. Well, my mother would tell you that I've been a storyteller since I was very, very little. But I really struggled for a long time with the actual form of writing. I could write a paragraph that was a single run-on sentence, but like there was just this big block. I was homeschooled actually for 7th grade and 8th grade. And during that time, my mom was working as a freelance journalist for the local paper and had an old Macintosh
and during
computer.
that time, my mom was... Yes.
And she had me sit down one day and write a report on it. And I have no idea anymore what that report was. But I went back and I sat down the very next day and wrote my first ever story, and it was 10 pages long. And it was probably atrocious because I had no idea with like grammar or punctuation, but that really opened up the sluice gate, for lack of a better term. And I've more or less been writing ever since. Um,
Okay.
my first novel, which I am currently very slowly, much more slowly than Inez and Todd would like, um, it came to me more or less. I was on a camping trip at a state park in Wisconsin, and
Hmm.
it's in the middle of all this glacial formations, and there was a really foggy, kind of rainy morning, and I was walking along the edge of the lake, and I would tell you that I like visually saw my main character walk out of the fog towards me. Like all of a sudden I had this story. And so that's where that one started. And I've sadly been working on it for probably close to 15 years at this point. It's gone through 2 different complete rewrites. And so now I'm
Oh,
just trying to edit it so that I can finally submit it and it can be done. Get it in Todd's hands so he can make it shine like a diamond.
oh, I can't wait. No rush, but I'm definitely excited about that.
Yay! So hopefully that'll be book 1 of a 5-book series. So I have the
That will
titles and
rock.
kind of the main characters for the other 4.
This will be amazing. I can't wait. So, what authors have inspired you as you walk through life?
Oof. Um, the ones that stick out to me the most, I would tell you Ellen Montgomery, but not the Anne of Green Gables series. Pretty much everything else she did, but I am not an Anne fan. Um,
Okay,
uh,
that's okay.
yeah, I just find her other stuff more interesting. Maybe because it's less read. I don't know. Who else? Definitely Jane Austen and Charlotte Bronte. I started to read them when I was in high school. I still remember the first time I read Jane Eyre. I had hit a fairly critical point in the book on the school bus on the way home, and I would not stop reading as I got off the school bus and walked up our driveway. Like I was literally, my nose was in the book because I couldn't put it down. Um,
Been there, done that.
yeah, yeah. I would say fantasy author-wise, I am a huge, huge fan of Madeline L'Engle,
Oh, me
Wrinkle
too.
in Time, excuse me. Also, Robin McKinley. She did The Blue Sword is probably one of my favorites of hers. She also did 2 different Beauty and the Beast retellings, about 20 years apart. The first one is called Beauty, and then the other one is called The Rose Daughter, and they're vastly different stories, but they're both very beautiful and very fascinating to me. Who else? Garth Nix, with his Abhorsen series, which if you're not familiar with that, you need to read it. The first book is called Sabriel. Very, very, very good. I think you personally, Jenny, would really enjoy it.
I need to just get you to give me a list of books to read.
Yeah, I've been rebuilding some recently, and my sister reminded me that the website Thrift Books exists, and that was a very dangerous thing. But
Oh, yeah, it's
there are certain
one of the books
books.
you've read recently I had to get for my kids and my sister kids. So yeah.
Which one was that?
The one with the girl and the dragon and the one that was eating the princesses.
Oh, Suni and the Dragon. Yes.
Yes.
Yep. Yeah, I love that one. I was so excited when she came back and gave me permission to read that for the podcast. So
That rock.
I could list a whole bunch more. I'm basically just trying to visualize my bookshelf in my head right now and like think about the
Oh,
titles
okay.
that are on there.
We could talk for hours on books alone, huh?
Oh, we absolutely could. I'm actually
Okay.
recently trying to get back to reading because I've been in a reading slump for, I would say, several years now. Um, just life getting in the way and trying to find that joy again. So,
You'll find it. You just gotta find the right book.
exactly. And I've got one that I'm really excited. I've read it before, but it's been years and years. And so I'm really excited to pick that one up and revisit it, but I keep finding reasons not to actually start it, which I need to stop.
Oh yeah, you just need to sit down in your comfy place and just start.
Yep. And that is actually, it's really interesting because they're based on Arthurian legends. And
Ooh,
it's apparently a 10-book series, which my sister is working her way through. She's the one who kind of reminded me of it. But
okay.
he's the guy, the author is a history professor, I want to say in Wisconsin, and he specializes in the Arthurian time period. And he wrote these books and he created this character who is the squire to the knight Sir Gawain. And it's kind of the
Oh,
adventures of some of the knights of the Round Table and also about him. And I don't remember what his name is off the top of my head right now. But it's a lot of fun. There's a lot of sass and snark and my
can
sisters
you
and I, our
send me a
favorite.
message
Mhm.
of the first book?
Yes, absolutely. Definitely can do
Thank
that.
you.
Yeah, my sisters and I, our favorite one of the ones that I've read, that we had
Mhm.
read at that time, it's the third book in the series. It's called The Savage Damsel and the Dwarf, and it's based off of the Arthurian story of the Kitchen Knight. And it is just
Oh,
absolutely hilarious. The dwarf is just super, super sarcastic, and like there's just so much really fun, witty verbal banter between some of the characters. It's a really fun one to read. So I highly
that would
recommend
rock.
that series, especially if you like history
Oh, I love
or
history.
legend, I
I've
should
been
say.
checking out Heldon Savor's Arthurian books, like The
Okay,
Lady That
I'm
Left the
not super
Lake.
fam Okay. Yeah, I mean that whole time period, if especially if you look into kind of the history of Arthurian legend and how it came about and like the different eras of it, it's really, really interesting. So
There's so much.
yeah,
It's fun to
there's
check out.
oh yeah, there is a YouTube channel that Nick and I really enjoy called Overly Sarcastic Productions. And they have two hosts. One does history, and then the other does more literature. And Red, who is the one who does literature, does a whole episode kind of talking about all of the different kind of authors that added to the Arthurian legends as we know them today.
Okay, I shall have to definitely check that out and add a link to the page
Yeah,
so everybody else
yeah,
can
they're
find it
fun.
too.
Yeah,
Okay,
think that's
what
good on that question.
what is your favorite thing about the outdoors?
Mm. Um, how inspiring it can be, I think. Growing up when I was fairly young, before we moved when I was 8 from the Chicago suburbs to a farm in South Central Wisconsin.
Mhm.
And when we were in the Chicago area, we were volunteering at an 1890s living history farm. And so, I would go and I'd play around this farm with some of the other, kids, because at that time there were a fair amount of kids around my age. Um,
Mhm.
but like just that experience, which is kind of the reason my dad bought the farm, and then playing around the farm. I actually taught outdoor education for a year when I was in a camping internship. Um, and so, I learned a lot teaching different classes. We take the kids on nature walks. I've always been fascinated by birds. I particularly love birds of prey. In
Mhm.
fact, earlier this week, I think on Monday, I was out for a walk. I work as a nanny, so I was out for a walk with my little girl, and she had fallen asleep in the stroller, which
Mhm.
wasn't the best because she didn't sleep when she was supposed to that day, but she slept in the stroller in
Mhm.
the morning and in the stroller in the afternoon. But there we saw well, I saw because she was asleep. I saw a hawk out hunting,
Mhm.
and me being me, I'm like, what kind of bird is it? What's the species? And because I don't know all the birds here in the Colorado area yet, and I went on a hunt and I found it. I was very excited that I found the species of hawk that it was, but I'm
That
that
is
kind of
cool.
nerdy person.
There's nothing wrong
Yeah,
with
we
that.
go on, oh, absolutely not. We go on hikes with a friend of ours who is a geologist and a physicist. And so, like, when we're all
Mhm.
together, it's like he stops and points out the rock formations, and I point out the plants and the birds.
That, yes, I have loved the videos of you guys showing the places where you're camping or walking or just hiking,
Hmm.
whichever it is. And the snow, that was beautiful because we get that like once in 20 years here in Texas.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I have family in Houston, and it's like anytime they get snow, it's like the hugest deal because you guys don't get it
It just
normally.
doesn't happen.
Yeah, that was the
Oh,
last one we did was we went up into the mountains to Estes
mhm.
Park, which is where the Stanley Hotel is. And
Yes.
being the horror person that you are, do you know what was inspired by the Stanley?
The Shining.
Yes, yeah. So we actually did the tour of the hotel before we left on Sunday and got to see the room that Stephen King stayed in, and it was really, really
Did
cool.
you
And
get
it's a
any pictures?
beautiful building. Um, I think we got a couple pictures. Nick took some video. It was actually snowing that day, and so he did
Oh,
this
okay.
little video of two writers in a snowstorm at the Stanley. This isn't going to go well.
That
But
is
yeah,
awesome.
we got a few pictures. We kind of were going up there just to get away for a weekend and kind of relax and spend some time together because he works nights and
But
I
the
work
snow
days.
there had to be beautiful, so I figured that would be a great thing to have a picture of, even if you just take the picture, print it, and put it on the wall to remember.
Mm-hmm. I know we did get some pictures. Because of his work schedule, I usually get up earlier in the day than he does. And so
Mhm.
I had gotten up fairly early Saturday morning and walked down into the town and found a coffee shop and kind of did a little bit of hiking and got some pictures of kind of the big peaks that are around there because it's right on the edge of the Rocky Mountain National Park. So
Mhm.
that's another reason we want to go back up is so we can actually go into the park and hike and do some of that. So definitely more pictures will be forthcoming.
That will rock. Um, how did you learn to make such beautiful flowers?
The paper flowers?
Yes.
Um, I was thinking about that because I was like, what even inspired me to like be like, I'm gonna make my because I learned how to do it because I'm gonna make my own wedding bouquet. So we're getting married in
Mhm.
September, and I decided I want to be more creative and I want to make my own wedding bouquet, but I don't want to just do it out of silk flowers. And so I actually
Mhm.
found a channel on YouTube. The lady's name is Leah Griffith. I will send you that as
Mhm.
well. And she has an entire line of crepe paper that she has worked together with one of the two remaining artistic class crepe paper factories. Uh,
Mhm.
excuse me. And she has several kits that you can get that come with all of the instructions and the paper and everything you need. And so I started there. But there are several books that you can get now that have like really high quality, like artistic level artists who have put these books together. Leah Griffith is kind of the jumping off point for a lot of people from what I understand. But she has a whole YouTube channel, and she does a lot of kind of tutorials of how to put these flowers together. And I kind of started there and then just practice and spending probably more money than Nick would prefer on supplies. But yeah, it's been a lot of fun, and I'm really, really enjoying it.
Josh would probably say the same thing about the fabric, but you know.
Right? Yeah. I am almost to the point where I don't need to buy any more paper, I don't think.
I hope not, but we'll find out.
I will also, I'll share a couple pictures. Yeah, I'll share a couple pictures of some of the flowers I've made on the page after the interview so people can see.
That would be great, because all the ones I've seen on Instagram have been gorgeous. Or was it Twitter? On one of the places you put it, and I know in the video.
I'm not really active on Twitter, so I did a video on my channel on YouTube, which I don't hardly have anything up there. But and I do share pictures of them on
YouTube Instagram. Channels. One has you doing makeup.
Oh, it was, yeah, that was a while ago, and I did like 2 videos, and that was it. Yeah. That was before I understood anything about video editing or anything, which Nick has taught me a lot. Well, not a lot, but more than I knew.
More than you knew before. I'm still trying to figure that out as I go.
Oh my gosh, yeah, there's a lot. But yeah, it's been fun. There's never a lack of something to learn, which my ADHD brain really likes.
Oh yeah, I love that too. Always trying to find new things.
Mm-hmm. Which is, I think, what I like about the podcast.
Yeah, you can explore all the countries and find wonderful stories I found. Okay, you have beautiful photos on your Instagram. Do each of the outfits, like the wigs and the costumes, do they all have their own persona?
Sort of. I'm trying to think. I know I shared some from a photo shoot I did with a friend of mine who's a professional photographer, where I'm in the blue dress. And actually, that one has a really fun story behind it, because that is the ghost of Spider Lake.
That sounds amazing.
So at that time, I was working at a camp in northern Wisconsin that was on Spider Lake, and I actually lived at a house on the campgrounds. And during the school year, Mondays is like the day that nobody is at camp. So I pretty much had the place to myself, and I could just like wander around. And I had just finished putting together this costume. In my brain, it was kind of going to be like Lady of the Lake, really mysterious. And I put it on, and I did all my makeup and everything. And I'm like, you know what? This feels really good. I don't want to take it off right away. I'm going to go for a walk. So I went for a walk along the lake shore. There happened to be a guided walleye fishing trip on the lake. And I had this cape that was made out of 7 layers of tulle that were all like stacked on top of each other. Come to find out, the guide of this fishing trip worked with one of my coworkers' husbands in town at the local like outfitter shop. and he'd had a head cold and he was on like cold medicine, and all the other guys were drinking, and all of a sudden they see me on the lake shore, and it looks like I'm floating, and they said they couldn't see my face and they literally thought I was a ghost. And I find out about this like a week later when her husband was helping us out in the kitchen, and he's like, "What are you doing?" And the guy would refer to it occasionally, like he found out that it was me. I worked here at the camp, and he thought it was hilarious. And every once in a while, he'd ask Brian how the ghost was doing.
That rocks.
Yeah.
That would be like
So sometimes they
interesting
do.
thing to do.
Right. I didn't intend to do it. So a lot of my costumes will have like a character feel to them, but won't be like a fully developed like cosplay character in their own right.
Okay.
When I met Nick at Todd's wedding, I was a steampunk pirate. And, I have
That was a
also
great
kind
outfit.
of yeah, it was a lot of fun. I made the skirt and the bustle out of curtains. Great way to get cheap material, by the way, especially if you need several yards
Oh,
of
yeah.
it.
That's the first one. Well, not the first one I've heard of doing that. Lindsay Sterling ended up doing that for one of her music videos.
Oh, very cool. Yeah, so that's where I went to get the material for that, and I figured I could get, something that looked like damask or, a little nicer of a material. I also have just kind of a Renaissance-y pirate, complete with the hat, which I think I wore in that too. And then I have kind of my Little Red Riding Hood Hobbit type character, which that started also at the camp up north when one of the ladies walked up to me one day and she went, "Do you know what you need?" And I said, "No, but you're going to tell me." And she's like, "You need a red cape, and then you need to go into the woods in the winter and do a photo shoot." And I'm like, "I absolutely do." So I still haven't gotten to go into the woods in the winter to do the photo shoot, but I do have the red cape.
That would be definitely gorgeous. There's so many things you could do with all the outfits you have.
Oh yeah, it's a lot of
I've
fun.
noticed the vintage outfits you've had, and then the long dresses and stuff. What drew you to the vintage outfits? Made you fall in love with that style?
A lot of it was, it kind of suited my body really well. The shapes and the styles. I love the 50s makeup because it's super simple. Like I could literally put on black winged liner, red lipstick, and I wouldn't need to do anything else. And I don't usually wear makeup every day. So I liked that factor about it. I mean, I grew up watching a lot of the old movies, a lot of Doris Day, a lot of Marilyn Monroe and that. We actually did not have a television at our house. My father was trying to keep from repeating what his father did, except that instead of sitting in front of the TV all the time, my dad sat in front of the computer. So I didn't have TV growing up. So like when we would go to my grandma's, we would watch a lot of the older programs. And I'm going to blank on it again, but there was a music program that she watched that did a lot of like big band with dance numbers, and so I would watch that with her too. So some of it was, I've always kind of felt like the fashion of my age, for lack of a better term, never really fit me very well. And when I started to get into the vintage fashion, it really helped me come to a place of peace and the starting of love for my body. again, really struggled with some self-esteem. I was bullied pretty heavily in 6th grade, which is why I was pulled out for 7th and 8th grade. And so just some of those body image issues, I felt beautiful in the vintage clothes, the vintage styled clothes. Most of them were reproduction,
Mhm.
because it's hard to find true vintage in my size. But yeah, so that's kind of where that came from. I still dip into it occasionally. I still have pieces I've held on to. Um, but I've
Mhm.
kind of turned it into my own style at this point. So touches
Yes,
of the vintage
you have
with
a beautiful
touches of rock
style.
and roll and punk. Well, thank you.
You're always beautiful, and I hope you feel that now.
I do, definitely more so than I used to.
Okay. Yeah, that's hard to do at times.
Yeah,
What
I
is
feel
your
like the older
favorite
I've
part
gotten,
of
the
the
more I've gotten. Sorry.
You continue and then I'll say it again. You you
Okay.
feel like the older
I
you've
just feel
gotten?
like yeah, the older I've gotten, the more comfortable I am with who I am and how I
Hmm.
present in the world. So it's funny how that happens.
Yes, at some point you decide you don't give a crap what they think.
Yeah, pretty much. This makes me happy. I'm gonna do it.
Oh yeah, most definitely. What is your favorite part about all the magical worlds you create and all the magic you have put in them?
That's a fun question. Um, I enjoy one of the reasons I was drawn to fantasy, I believe, is that I have that um, ability or the freedom to kind of put together whatever I want. Um, the rules apply only as much as I create the rules for the world. So I find that very
Hmm.
fascinating. As a folklorist, I love to pull bits and pieces of other cultures together, with my novel, Out of Ashes. I have this whole elemental based magic system, and
Hmm.
the main god in this world presents as a white Asian style dragon. And I also have a green man type character who is a demigod, who is a fairly important character to my main character. So pulling all of that together, figuring out, okay, how do how does the magic work? How, um, the way I kind of have it is most people can control a single element or influence an
Hmm.
element. My main character ends up having the ability to do two, and had most of her abilities suppressed for the majority of her life. So as we go through book one, she's learning how to use her abilities, through a tutor who came to her in an unlikely form. And so that's a lot of fun. In the story Elysium in the Snow, um, my main character has these very, very vivid dreams where she's
Hmm.
essentially in the underworld. So Hades and Persephone. So pulling kind of some of these lesser discussed, lesser well-known Greek myths, and kind of how do I
Hmm.
combine them with Victorian society? Like that's a fun, how is that going to work? How are the rigid kind of class structures of the Victorian society going to play into, the elements of the chthonic mythology that I am bringing into this world? So, it's just kind of fun to take and mix everything together, shake it up in a
Oh
cocktail
yeah.
shaker and see what you got.
I love the fact that I had to do a lot of research in order to enjoy your story more. in the Elysium in the Snow. Because I read it, and I'm like, I
Mm-hmm.
don't understand half this stuff. And then I went back through, and I looked it up, and then it made more sense. And
Yeah.
it is a
I mean,
beautiful
that whole
story.
series, yeah, that whole series is going to have a lot of Greek mythology kind of mixed in, which is a lot of fun for me because, it's an excuse to pursue one of my pet subjects.
I look forward to that one. I can't wait for that one most.
Well, most likely it's going to come in the form of a podcast
That's
and
fine.
not as a written thing. So that's one of the many podcasts I'm going to have coming.
I look forward to that. It's going to be something I can do while I play with Dante or do dishes or whatever. And that's always a wonderful
Yeah.
thing. Multitask. Um,
Yes. Oh my goodness.
okay. In these worlds, which character would you choose to hang out with and what would you guys do? Out of all
Okay.
the ones you've created or have not put down on paper, which character do you choose? Or in audio?
Yeah. I'm thinking through. Um, so in my first original fiction podcast, which is hopefully coming this August, there is a character that um, their name is Trout, and they are a grizzly bear. And the main character of that story is a first generation Italian American who works for the Pinkerton Agency. And she is sent out here to Colorado because there are these weird things happening in the mines. And, the Pinkerton
Mm-hmm.
Agency has been hired by the mine owners to try and figure out, what's going on because they're losing profit. So a lot of that story is going to be a lot of fun. It actually came to me out of a dream in which a girl and her pet bear were ghost hunting in like an abandoned Wild West town. Like that was the dream. And I was like, I need to turn this into something.
Oh yeah,
So I'm
I'm
working on
full
that
on
one.
board. Anything with ghosts.
Well,
Oh,
and I'm excited too because I'm also going to play into a lot of mining superstition. Because let me tell
mhm.
you, Welsh miners are probably the most superstitious people in the world. And I think I'm going to play a little bit into Terry Pratchett's hand and play into anthropomorphic personification. So, where if you believe in something enough, it becomes real.
Mhm. That should be interesting. But what would you guys do for fun for the day?
We'd probably go play in a creek. Um, yeah, I don't know. Like, that was my first thought was it would be fun to hang out with a somewhat sentient grizzly bear and just do something. I don't know.
Go play in the creek,
Other
catch
than
fish.
that, right, yeah, just be kids again, kind of. Um, who else would I want to hang out with? Ah, I don't want to give too much away about Out of Ashes, but there's a character in there who would be a lot of fun to hang out with. Actually, any of the
Mhm.
members of the Phoenix Guard. Um, so in that world, their country is ruled by a queen. The king has passed away,
Mhm.
and she has a all-female bodyguard unit that protects her.
Mhm.
And so the idea for the main characters for this book is I'm going to follow four of them and
Mhm.
kind of what happens to them. And so pretty much any of those ladies, because they've been kicking butt and taking names, and they could teach me a lot. but also just kind of with it being more of a medieval type society, and then you have
Mhm.
this like group of powerful female warriors. That's kind of a fun dichotomy. So we'd probably hang out at the barracks, and they could maybe teach me to throw knives, or some basic sword maneuvers or something.
That would rock.
Yeah, right.
Um,
I want Leary to teach me to throw knives. She's crazy.
that I can't wait. Okay. I have noticed that you have taken down Cardinals of Snow when I went to go buy the books for my sister, and
Yes.
you had talked about rewriting it in one of the podcasts. What spurred the idea to go back and rewrite it into what you're doing?
So there's some pressure in some ways to create kind of more of a unified universe, for lack of a better term. So I have another story series that will be a podcast eventually,
Mm-hmm.
called the Forgotten Lore. I had to think about the name of it for a second, in which it's an alternate universe set in modern day where the Fae live alongside humans. Um, so fairies, wizards, sorcerers, witches, and their magic is real. So I have this whole series. I've started the first book. It's called The Witch's Kitchen. And
Mm-hmm.
so my thought was to take Cardinals in the Snow and rework it slightly. I would keep, the core of the story there, but enhance some of the
Mm-hmm.
elements so that it would kind of fit into that universe.
Okay.
So that's kind of the idea there. I kind of want to see if I can do it more than anything else. Because I could,
Okay.
especially with Cardinals, they have a lot of kind of um, the connection with, you know, loved ones who have passed on coming to visit. There's kind of a magical
Mm-hmm.
connection with that bird already. Um, and it would be kind of fun to hear what Max is thinking. For those of you who have not read the book, Max is her corgi, and kind of dive into that a little bit more.
Okay. I'm definitely curious because you took like my favorite romance story and then you're going to take it and do something else with it. So I'm very curious and I want to see what you're doing with it because whenever
Okay.
somebody asks for a recommendation, that is probably one of the first two I give. That and James Black by
Well,
Sky Turner.
most likely what I will end up doing is putting Cardinals in the Snow back up as it is, and then changing the title slightly for this new, more magical version of the story. So I don't plan on
Okay.
completely just butchering Cardinals in the Snow and not putting it back up, but I want to see if I can kind of take it and turn it into um,
I
just
don't
more
think
as a
you're gonna
curiosity
butcher it.
lesson.
To
Well,
me,
no, not
with the
butcher
way
it,
you do
but,
it, I don't
kind of
feel
take
like
it
you
apart and
can butcher it.
reassemble it.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah. Not butcher, but, perform surgery.
You're gonna slightly alter it and see where it ends up. Yes.
Yeah, pretty much. But
Okay.
I'm proud of that original story, so I don't think that's gonna really go anywhere. It's just taking a slight hiatus from
Okay.
Amazon at the moment.
Well, that's fine. Are you you had talked before about fixing your original novels, the ones that you had wrote as physical copies that we can buy on there. Is that still a thing that you're thinking about? As in like physical
Like
buy
turning them
physical
into
copies?
paperbacks?
Yeah.
Yes, I am. I'm looking into I tend to like to do things myself. So I'm working on learning how to do the actual page formatting so that, because with physical books as opposed to ebooks, you kind of set the text a certain way. Whereas a lot of
Mhm.
times with ebooks, you have to do it so that it can be resized to fit on whatever device the person is reading it on.
Mhm.
So I'm learning how to do that, and then I will most likely be going through Ingram Sparks, which is the same company that Balance of Seven uses, because their
Mhm.
quality is just outstanding. So, and then they would be
Okay.
available as physical copies. I just don't know
Okay.
quite when that's going to happen.
I look forward to it because yours are worth holding.
Well,
I
thank
hope
you.
you take that as a compliment. I mean it, as I mean it. So
I do.
then,
I do.
okay.
I'm a physical book
Um.
person too. In fact, I'm a hardcover book person, so I've been actually upgrading some of my favorite paperbacks to hardcover lately. Thank you, Thrift Books. There we go. I had a hair that
Yes.
was like right inside the collar of my shirt.
Okay. What are your goals with Lantern Audio Works, and what are, what should we expect in the future from you in Lantern Audio Works?
From me in Lantern Audio Works, well, I will be continuing with bedtime stories. I definitely have no plan to stop that. I actually have through, I think, February of 2023 scheduled out. Like I know what culture, if not what stories, I will be doing each month for that. I'm
Mhm.
actually in the process of trying to record ahead so that I don't end up,
Mhm.
skipping entire months like I did in February. Um, and that way also, when I do need a mental health break, um, it's not gonna affect the podcast. Like episodes can still go up as normal. So I'm working on that, and then Wild Contingent will be my first fiction podcast. Right now we are looking at August for the release of that. I want to say I have about 6 or 7 more vague story ideas for fiction podcasts also coming. The plan is for Lantern Audio Works, we're going to be focusing on podcasts. We had tried audiobooks a little bit, but we liked having more creativity than Audible was allowing us. So,
Yes, that I can
with the
understand.
ability to
There is a
put like,
major difference.
yeah, like, mm-hmm. Yeah, and sadly, a major difference between how they treat indies as to how they treat, the big five audiobooks.
Mhm.
So we are going to be doing that. I know Nick has 4 or 5 he's working on right now.
Mhm.
Brimstone season 1 is just come back out again. And then I believe Spaceman is going to be his next fiction podcast. And he's got Brimstone season 2 is coming, and more Old Bob, and um, he's got a couple more that he's not ready to talk about yet. So, but they're coming. So, and I'm going to be doing Forgotten Lore. Originally, I had pictured it as a 7-book um, series. So I think what it'll end up being is a 7-season podcast. And instead of writing a novel, I'll write each book as a podcast series. And I
Okay.
also have um, The Children of Nyx, which is the continuation of Elysium in the Snows universe. Um, that is going to be coming, as well as I'm sitting here mentally thinking. um,
Mhm.
Wild Contingent. I have a series that I've been playing with for a long time that takes place in the world of Out of Ashes called The Bard Tales. Um, and that
Mhm.
one's going to be kind of, the bard is going out and he does his traveling, and then he comes back and he's like sharing stories with the queen. So
Mhm.
I don't have any specific like folk tales that I'm looking at exploring with that one, but that's kind of my idea for that is like he's going out and he's experiencing the stories of different folk tales or maybe different Brothers Grimm stories, and then coming back and telling them to the Queen. So I know I have one or two more, but I can't think of them right now. But yeah,
I
there's
look
going to be
forward
a
to
lot
all of
coming,
them.
basically. So, and yes, you'll be able to listen to them on the website, lanternaudioworks.com. That also has links to our YouTube channel, our Patreon, our Twitch. Punks in the Library is going to be coming back as a Twitch show. It's not going to be just a podcast anymore, which we're both pretty excited about that. We've got a meeting this weekend to kind of hash out the final details so that we can announce our return date on Punks in the Library. But yeah, I think that's more than enough at the moment with us both working full-time jobs.
Oh, yeah. I look forward to all of those, but then again, you probably knew that. I'm a diehard fan.
We appreciate you very much.
Are you a plotter or a pantster?
Oof. I am definitely more of a pantser than Nick is. Nick is a very much so a plotter. And I tend to be a big picture plotter. And then once I start writing, the characters send me off into another direction. So, you know, some of it is
So you're
as
like,
they
I
develop,
want
as you
this to
write
happen.
them. Well, and that's kind of
And then
why
they're
I'm
like,
like, okay,
that
this is
way.
kind of my general idea. Yeah. They choose to go to the Bog of Eternal Stench instead of where, or I don't know. It can be fun.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, like a lot of times I will get into a flow and just, you know, my brain is going so fast my fingers can barely keep up. And sometimes by the end of that, I have a completely different direction. Most of the time, it's a better direction than the original idea. Sometimes it's not.
Only one way to find out. Just walk on the path or run on the path and see what happens.
Exactly. Yeah. Like when I wrote Hound of Hecate, that literally was Nick going, I want you to sit down and write a story. You have an idea, sit down, write it. And I wrote that entire short story in probably about 4 hours. Did very little editing to it before I read it live for the first time and put it up on the podcast. At this point, it's not on the podcast anymore because it's going to be part of my Tales from Port Apollo, which is, that's right. I have two different podcasts that are going to take place in the Elysium in the Snow universe. One is Children of Nyx, which will follow Macaria. And then the other one is called Tales from Port Apollo, and it's just going to be like a collection of short stories of all these different maybe minor characters from the other podcasts, but things that happen to them, stories that they experience, like the Hound of Hecate was. That's the plan for that one.
And that one's still on my phone.
Yeah, you got it before it disappeared.
Yeah, it was there, and I'm like, okay, I can have it. Great, I'm gonna get
it. I was actually pretty proud of the soundscaping that I put together for the back of that one. That was fun. It was the first time I tried to do that.
You did an amazing job.
Well, thank you. And it was also the first time I tried to do like voices. Oh, I see what you're saying now. You got the cow version of it. Yeah.
Because she had two versions up, and I'm like, but I want the cow. And you had got the
Yeah,
flowers.
I like the flowers. Yeah, I got it partly because my nanny kid, she likes to, like, when I have
Oh,
cups that have straws, she likes to try and pull the straw out. And with that one, you can't pull the
you
straw
can't take the
out.
straw. It's just sort of stuck
Right.
there. And then the
Yeah. So
valve
I was
won't
like, well,
let
that's a
anything
feature.
in, which rocks. Well, it won't let anything
Yeah.
out, but you can suck the air in through it, but nothing's going to get in it. I hope that makes sense.
Right. Yeah. It does. I understand because I also have the cup. I think I
Yeah,
actually accidentally left it at work today. But anyway, I'll be back tomorrow.
I don't think they're going to get rid of it. They like you too much.
No, they won't.
Um,
They really seem to, which I'm happy about because I'm much happier at this job than I was at the office job I had before it.
you seem that way. You seem like you have life again. Before it seemed like it was just
It's
draining
getting
out of
there.
you.
It definitely was for a little while there. Yeah, that I worked for a lawyer for 4 months. It was the worst 4 months of my life. I now work for a lawyer in a
And
different
so,
capacity.
yeah, this is much better. You seem happier.
I think a lot of it was um, I'm not nearly as stressed with unrealistic expectations. Um,
Mhm,
because when I worked for the lawyer, there were, the criteria I was judged by. Um, when I came into the position, I was literally not able to fulfill, and yet was still expected to fulfill. Um, and so that was a lot of stress. I came home crying multiple times a week because I was so stressed out about it. And when I got the job as the nanny, you're able to breathe a little easier. And
mhm,
in some respects, Nick getting a job where he worked nights, because before that, we were more or less living out of each other's pocket, and
mhm.
I was not getting any alone time. So now I've kind of had that buffer, and that also just the ability to rest. And we're
Mhm.
not under a financial strain at the moment. We're actually right on the brink of buying a car. And,
That
four,
is
five,
awesome.
6 months ago, it would not have been possible. So, there's just
Mhm.
been a lot of stressors that have been lifted, and I've had the time that I needed to rest. And I'm very hopeful that soon I'll be able to sit down and start writing again, because I'm still struggling with that a little bit. But that's where bedtime stories has been kind of saving me. So,
You'll get
different
there. I know
cultures,
you
different
will.
ideas. I know. I'm not worried about it. It's just kind of frustrating that I'm not there yet. Excuse me.
That I can understand.
Yeah.
You, it will be
So,
amazing. Do you get all
well,
your
thank you.
inspiration from dreams?
No, usually I don't remember my dreams, or if I do, like, I'll wake up and remember them, and then within a few hours I can't remember them, like, out of my head. But the majority of my dreams that I do remember are like I'm watching a story play out. Like, I'm not personally
Mhm.
involved in the dream. It's like I'm watching a movie in my head. So I,
Oh,
I get
wow.
some pretty crazy dreams sometimes. Yeah. And I don't know if that's
That,
the ADHD side of my brain or what, but it's always kind of been that way.
where do you get your inspiration then? Or do you know?
Um, Lots of places. A lot of times my inspiration can be very visual. Um, Sometimes when I'm looking for a character or something to spark an idea, I go to Pinterest, and I'll look up
Mhm,
like fantasy aesthetic or fantasy character inspiration, and I'll just scroll until, an image
mhm.
catches my eye. And so a lot of times I do that, and then I start, well, okay, who is this character? What is their story? Um, and stuff like that. I think my story that was in Dragons Within, Rebirth,
Mhm.
um, kind of came from the thought of exploring where my God character, how these magical gifts come into that world. Um,
Mhm.
and that that was in guarding her own. And so, well, what would a God do to protect their own, more or less? Um, so, and I eventually have a story of how that spread. Um, yeah, I want to tell a lot more stories in that world because I kind of have four main countries that are all kind of
Mhm.
connected, that are all inspired from different cultures in our world. And there could be a lot of spin-offs. In fact, I
Oh yeah,
have
like
loosely planned a companion series, so with 4 books in it.
whereas my thought went was how well not went, but my what was imagining is how the children grew up with
hmm
their dad's family and how they learned about themselves and their gifts.
hmm Right, exactly. Um, so I think the next story out was going to be 1 to 2 generations removed from those children, and kind of
Mhm.
how, it spread to the different nations, since they're 4 elements, 4 children, kind of 4 countries,
Mhm.
um, and the
Mhm.
connection that they have with this the dragon Ashutosh, is what I named her. She
So
goes
that's
by
how you
Ash in
pronounce
the
it,
story.
Oshikosh? Okay.
I think that's how I pronounce it. I don't even remember what
Yes.
culture
And
it's from
that's the
anymore.
important way of how to pronounce it, is how you meant it to be pronounced.
Right.
But there's also that thing where if it's pronounced wrong, it's usually because they read it and have never heard it before. So,
Yes, that's the fun thing about fantasy names, right?
oh yeah, it's like Sioned is actually pronounced Sinead, Sinead
Yeah.
something. I can't pronounce it right. Sinead. That sounds better. Sinead, like Sinead
Yes,
O'Connor.
Sinead. Yeah, and like when you look at the word, like the Irish
It's
spelling, you're like, how? How?
not word, but yeah, it
Yeah.
it's one of those that make
Um,
no sense.
oh yeah. No, Nick and I watch a YouTube channel called the Try Channel, in which it's a
Hmm.
lot of Irish comedians, and they literally try different things. But they have a bunch of people that have traditionally Irish names, and so some of them you
Hmm.
look at it and you're like, and that name is pronounced Edine, huh? And you're
Hmm.
like, I don't know how you got that one.
Exactly. Jody had asked, "What is your driving force behind your unique take on folklore?"
I think it's just like I've loved folklore since I was a little kid. The fairy tale,
Hmm.
folk tale section of the library was the one I went to first. Um,
Hmm.
One of my earliest favorite stories that I recall was the more historically accurate retelling of Pocahontas, of her
Hmm.
life with after she married a different John, not John Smith,
Hmm.
and went to England, and
Yeah.
that side of things. I would jokingly blame my mother for a lot of that. She read to us a lot when we were kids. Um, C.S. Lewis's The Chronicle of Narnia. Um, I remember before we moved to Wisconsin, so I was younger than 8. Um, and we lived in a split level, and so my brother's door was 90 degrees from my door. And she would sit in that little corner in between the doors and read out loud at night because she knew
Mhm.
I was awake and listening. And so I remember her reading Oliver Twist. I remember her reading Shipwrecked to my brothers, but also, she knew I was listening. Um,
Mhm.
we She would never start one of the Chronicle of Narnia books except on the weekends because we wouldn't let her finish until she finished the book. you know.
Mhm.
Um, and then maybe some of it is not having the television really pushed me to read a lot as a child. Um, but yeah, I would say a lot of it is just I've always been fascinated by stories of different cultures. I've always, especially for me personally, Eastern European folklore is just so crazy and so fascinating. And like, I'm really excited that I get to explore some Ukrainian tales this month. Um,
Mhm.
and I have
We are
plans
too.
to go to Czechoslovakia. I was originally going to be doing Czechoslovakia this month, but felt that with everything that's been going on in the world, that Ukraine deserved to have a little bit of its culture put on display. Um,
Mhm.
so that was partly why I changed that. So I'm still going to be doing Czechoslovakia, and it's just going to get pushed to 2023 because I've got everything else scheduled already.
That works.
But yeah, that's a lot of it, and a lot of it is, the more you read folklore, the more you find elements of similarity. Like every culture, more or less, has a Cinderella story.
Yes.
One of the oldest is from China, and I believe I'm going to be doing that one either in May or November, one of the 2 months that I do my Cinderella stories from around the world, in which
Mhm.
they live in caves, and she has a pet koi fish that she feeds her scraps and leftovers. Um, so I find it fascinating, especially with um, story elements like that. There's actually a database where people have gone through and researched and found all these different kind of types of stories, like the
Mhm.
forgot or the lost heir and things like that. And I'm just now starting to explore that a bit, which has been a lot of fun. But yeah, I just like stories. I don't know.
That works. I love stories, and so does
Yeah.
she.
Yeah. So it's the fascination of these are the stories that these people told at this time. And maybe some
Mhm.
of that came from, pursuing an English literature degree. Generally, for me, the older the better. I would have much
Mhm.
rather read Beowulf than T.S. Eliot, or Virginia Woolf. Those
Mhm.
I don't like them as much. There's not nearly as much fascination and mystery and mythology, for lack of a better term,
Mhm.
to them. Or even we read the Canterbury Tales in Middle
Yes.
English. That was fun.
Oh yeah.
So, it's just, and when I did quite a few classes where we were reading, the Greek myths and discussing, the different ritual and why. Because in the Greek world, the gods were the unpredictable force. And so you appease the gods to
Mhm.
try and live as uncrazy a life as possible. Because, everything could be blamed on Zeus not keeping it in his pants or. I never understood why Hera always punished the women and never her husband.
I don't know. It
Me
makes
either.
no
She couldn't
sense.
she couldn't actually she couldn't kill the children actually because they are demigods and the gods
Mhm.
can't kill other gods. So that was interesting, but she went after the victims instead of the perpetrator. I don't understand it, but oh
But
well.
the whole Methuselah thing was still a mean thing to do.
Right? Anyway, we're gonna get off topic again.
I don't know where the topic is. The topic's all over because I just went through your Instagram and I've been listening. I'm like, what would be good to find out? I finally get to ask her all the questions. What should I ask that's not too personal? You know?
Yeah,
Because I
I
don't
gotcha.
want to seem like overly excited. That's not my business, but I'm going to ask anyway. So, coffee or tea?
Ooh, that is a good question because I was a solid tea only person for years. Didn't start
Mm-hmm,
drinking coffee till maybe 10 years ago. Um,
mm-hmm.
Now I do both. I am a big fan of a good cup of English breakfast or Irish breakfast with a dash of cream and a little bit of honey or sugar. One of my
Mm-hmm.
favorite teas right now is one called Sweet and Spicy, and it's a cinnamon and sweet orange, which is very
Okay.
warming, and especially if you've got a little bit of a sore throat or a little bit of congestion, it
Mm-hmm.
just feels really good. I like that one partly because I can get it in a black caffeinated or a decaffeinated. So, depending on if I
Oh,
want to
wow.
have a cup of it at night or in the morning, they offer both.
Okay.
But I also like my coffee. Um, I am a French vanilla creamer girl. So even the few times I go to Starbucks, because that is still a luxury, I will most likely get
Mm-hmm.
a vanilla latte just because that's what I like. So, and I
Okay,
don't like
nothing
things
wrong with that.
overly sweet. Now,
Do you have a favorite coffee you like?
um, a medium to light roast, but beyond that, not really.
Okay.
We have a really cool little company that has a coffee shop in Denver. They refurbished the um, the train station. So our Union
Mm-hmm.
Station, where all of the commuter trains and Amtrak also comes out of there. Um, they redid the inside. It is absolutely beautiful, and it has all these cute little boutiques and shops, and then there's a restaurant there as well. And there is a coffee shop there called Pig Train. And we had to ask
Mm-hmm.
what exactly is a pig train because we'd never heard the term.
Mm-hmm.
And that is when they like stack two cars on top of each other. And so
Mm-hmm.
we have a coffee company called Pig Train Coffee, and we've gotten their coffee before, and it's really good, but it's definitely like special occasion coffee still, because it's all small
Mm-hmm.
batch and but yeah, more or less, I just like a light to medium roast. I'm not a dark roast girl. I have to be a little careful because the acidity of the coffee can give me indigestion. So,
Yes. Okay. That is awesome. I like Seven Blossoms tea. That would be a recommendation.
ooh, you'll
It's
have
got
to
a
message me the
minty,
name of it so that I
flowery
remember.
taste. It is really nice. Okay. Okay. I know Nick keeps telling us how he likes your cooking. Do you have a favorite recipe you like to make?
Ooh, um, not really. I like making soups, but when I make
Mm-hmm.
soups, more often than not, I don't use a recipe. I have like my ingredients that I want to put in it. So like a traditional chicken noodle maybe. So I know, okay, onion, carrot, celery, chicken, and we like to put egg noodles in it. But beyond that, I don't measure stuff. I just keep adding things until it tastes right. Um, a
Okay.
previous nanny job, I also provided meals like 2 times a week for dinner for them. And I
Mm-hmm.
think sometimes the mom got a little frustrated because I would make something, it would be really good, and I'd be like, I don't know what I did. I just put stuff together in here. So they could never recreate it.
Okay.
But I have a chicken piccata recipe that I enjoy a lot.
Hmm.
You take a chicken breast and kind of cut it in half thickness wise, and then
Hmm.
pound it out real thin and bread it and
Hmm.
fry it, and then you make a white wine sauce for it and serve it with
Hmm.
it's got some garlic and stuff in it too, and serve it with noodles. And that is super tasty. I haven't made that one in a while. I tend to like things that are a little more international, maybe would be a good word, than what Nick likes.
Yeah.
So I tend to do a lot of dishes now that are more classic, I would say Northern European, than what I would like to do sometimes. So having one of my good friends just moved to Denver, and having her here has been a lot of fun because she's mostly vegan but eats fish. And so,
Yeah.
I can do recipes with her that Nick wouldn't ever eat. So like
Yeah.
I did a stuffed acorn squash with wild rice and craisins and
Mm,
mushrooms, and it was so good. And
that
then
sounds
Brussels
wonderful.
sprouts with balsamic glaze, and just stuff like that that I enjoy. He doesn't so much, so I don't tend to make them when it's just the two of us.
Okay. Definitely sounds yummy. Definitely want to try making the piccata.
Yeah, I'll see if I can't find the recipe that I use. Um, some of my knowledge came from one of my other good friends. Her husband used to work at an Italian restaurant. And so they stayed
Okay.
with me when they were in town for her baby brother's wedding. And he kind of taught me
Hmm.
how he makes his. And so that was helpful.
That rocks. That would be awesome, and Josh and Martha would appreciate it. Me
Yeah.
making something new with chicken.
hmm Yes, we eat a lot of chicken here as well. I will say, ever since Nick got a sous vide, are you familiar with sous vide
Hmm.
cooking?
Yes.
Okay, so we will get like a big pack of chicken, and then we'll season the chicken breasts differently, and then vacuum
Hmm.
seal them and sous vide them, and then throw them in the freezer. You just pull one out at a time, because usually we
Hmm.
split one like decent sized chicken breast between the two of us, and that's plenty of meat for us. And it's already cooked. I just
Oh.
have to like let it thaw and then maybe pan sear it quickly, um,
Hmm.
to heat it back up again. So we like our sous vide a lot. It's lovely. I cooked steaks in
Quick,
it for when
easy.
we went up to Estes Park.
Ooh.
Not quick.
I
When
mean,
we
it makes
did
it
our
when you
turkey
go
breast
back
and
and get it warm up and everything.
right,
It'll make
yes, yeah,
other
that
dinners
part of
quick
it
and
is quick
easy
and easy,
afterward.
yes. Yeah. You have to do some prep ahead of time, but then once you do, once it's cooked, it definitely does, speed things up. But yeah, we did our turkey breast in it for Thanksgiving, and I want to say the
Hmm.
cook time was between 7 and 8 hours. But it goes,
Oh
a
yeah,
steady, slow temperature, and it's the most tender and flavorful turkey I've ever eaten. So, and it's a breast, so it's white meat. And I tend to be a dark meat
sounds
person,
awesome.
so.
We'll definitely have to try one. I've been on the fence for a while.
Mhm.
Okay,
Yeah,
thank you
Nick
so
got it
much.
because you're very welcome. My brain just stopped, so it's been that kind of a
Nick got
week.
it because of something, is what you were saying.
Um, yeah, he's much more the scientific side of things, and so knowing it cooks it
Hmm.
for, he likes that part about it. So he's not going to mess it up. I think is what he's afraid of.
Oh yeah, that's definitely something that you can look forward to. Not messing it up with
Hmm.
apparatus like that. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for interviewing with me and being part of the channel and being part of this episode. I've put different
Very
links in
welcome.
the chat. Where do
Okay.
I have all the links? The Instagram, the website, the
Yep.
Twitters is because I know you don't
Yeah.
necessarily like doing Facebook, but do I have all the other
I've
places
I've
right?
been trying to back off on social media, so yeah. Yes, I believe so. Yeah, and you can throw the Lantern AudioWorks Twitter on there because that one is definitely much more
Okay,
active than my personal one.
I have both
Um, but
Twitters up.
yeah. Okay. Okay.
Okay, and then
Yeah,
I have
that's good.
Exotic
I
Ant
am
up as
most
well
active. Yes. Yep, I
on
am most
Insta.
active at this point on Instagram. So, trying to narrow
Okay,
down the amount of time I spend on social media so I have more time to write. Or at least that's the
that
theory.
right? That is the theory. Everything is in theory, especially lately. Is
Yep.
there anything else you'd like to add about where to find you, what to expect, how not to cook chicken?
Um, I mean, don't overcook it would be my only, because that's not very tasty.
Oh
You
no.
can listen to Bedtime Stories with Celosia Crane on our website, lanternaudioworks.com. You can, yeah, other than that, Instagram, The Exotic Ant. And yeah, those are kind of the
YouTube,
places I am most
Leonard
active right
Audio
now.
Works.
Yep, Lantern Audio Works, Twitter, Lantern Audio Works, Twitch, Lantern underscore AW. That is kind of the for Instagram as well and Twitter. So Lantern
And I
underscore
think I forgot
AW is
TikTok,
our
but that's
account.
mostly Nick.
Yeah, I do not want TikTok back on my phone. Let's put it that way. It ate up
That is
way too
okay.
much of my time. So he kind of
Okay.
runs our
And I'm
TikTok
not going to force
account.
you.
Thank
Okay.
you. I end up falling down the rabbit hole and maybe resurface 2 hours later, and that's not a good thing.
Oh yeah, it's very easy to do that. Okay. Thank you so much. You have an amazing night, and you are
You're very
always a joy.
welcome. I will. Thank
Thank
you for
you.
having me.
See you later, and have a great night. And thank you guys for coming and joining us. And stay awesome.
Yes, thank you. Do my
Okay.
best.
Bye, and thank you guys.